Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another episode of Chess Chat, a program brought to you live from the Rollstone Bank and Trust Studio at Fitchburg Access Television. I am George Marajanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club, the second oldest chess club in Massachusetts, meets every Wednesday evening from 6:30 to 10:30 in rooms 144 and 145 of the McKay Campus Complex at the university. And with me for this 193rd episode of Chess Chat is our award-winning director, Darren Dame of Fitchburg, recipient of FATV's prestigious Boulder Award in 2009, and now in his 18th consecutive year directing Chess Chat. And Darren is assisted in the control room by fellow resident and longtime Wachusett Chess Club member Brian Bigelow, who, in addition to cueing the moves of a game that we're going to present our Chess Chat fans, also prepares the set for Chess Chat. But sitting across from me is my trusty colleague, longtime associate, a man, a multi-talented player, a player who takes chess photos, has taken hundreds of chess photos, which you can actually see on the Wachusett Chess Club website, wachusettchess.org, but he also is an author. He's written chess books. And we'll get into maybe about that when I introduce my co-host, Dave Kuchar of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hello, George.
Well, Dave, actually, you've written at least a couple of books.
Just one.
Well, actually, maybe on the different titles, because you wrote a book that you used to call "Don't Play Like Me," wasn't it?
The first one was like a subset of the later book.
So
it was an early version. We had about 100 problems.
Oh.
The final one had 1,002.
But these are all tactics. These are called progressive tactics or progressively challenging tactics.
Yep.
So, yes, so you are an acknowledged and accomplished chess author. And your book is available actually on Amazon, is it not?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I want to give you credit for being a chess author.
Thank you.
Well, Dave, this episode of Chess Chat is very significant because we are, with this program, celebrating a great event. In fact, it's the 100th anniversary of a great event in chess. It is the 1924 International Chess Masters Tournament that was held in New York City 100 years ago. Now, what made this tournament really significant is we had 3 players of 11 players who played in this event. One was then the world champion.
Right.
His name was Jose Raul Capablanca.
Right.
We had the former world champion, Emmanuel Lasker, and we had the future world champion, Alexander Yekhin. Now, this tournament was played at the Alamac Hotel in New York City. And our director, Darren Dame, has a photo, a postcard photo of this hotel. This is a very famous hotel, the Alamac Hotel. This hotel, the structure, was built in 1923.
Okay.
The chess players were there the following year.
Okay.
This was a luxury hotel, one of the premier hotels in New York, and it hosted the tournament, which, by the way, was organized by the Manhattan Chess Club, which was the second oldest chess club in the country, the Manhattan Chess Club. It was founded in 1877, but unfortunately, it closed its doors in 2002 because of the rents. They were at various locations in their 124 years of existence, but it came 2002. They came to a dead end, and they had to close their doors. But again, they were the second oldest chess club, in the country.
And who was the oldest?
The oldest is the Mechanics Institute Chess Club in San Francisco, which actually was founded before the Civil War, 1855.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and still going strong.
Yeah.
They are the oldest continuously practicing the chess club, in the country, the Mechanics Institute. Yeah. So anyway, so this hotel, where the Manhattan Chess Club organized this tournament, ran this tournament, which It consisted of 11 players, and we do have a photo, a historic photo, that Darren is going to show our viewers of this tournament. And you can see the banner, which it says what, 1924 Chess Masters, International Chess Master Tournament, and then the name of the hotel, Alamac Hotel. But let's identify some of the players here. Shall we actually work from the front row to the back row?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Now in the front row, on the far left, we actually have, I believe that's Fred Yates of England. 40 years old. He's 40 years old, Fred Yates, sitting there. Now sitting next to Fred Yates, let me take a close look. That looks like
Capablanca.
Jose Raul Capablanca.
Yep.
He was the world champion.
Yep.
Yeah. He was actually at that time when he played in this tournament. Capablanca was 35 years old. Okay. Now, who's sitting next actually to Capablanca? Is that actually Janowski? David Janowski? I believe that is David Janowski, who at the time was living in 1924. He was living in France, but he was born in Poland, but he moved to France. Okay. So that's Master David Janowski of France. Now, who's sitting next to? Oh, we actually have cousins next to Janowski. The second from the right is Edward Lasker,
okay,
who had settled in the United States. He was a U.S. citizen, and he's sitting next to his distant cousin. By the way, Edward Lasker in that photo is 38 years old. But at the end, the far end in the front, is Emanuel Lasker, who was the previous world champion.
Right, right.
And he actually reigned as world champion from 1894 until Capablanca defeated him in 1921. Emanuel Lasker there is actually 55 years old. All right, so he was actually the oldest player.
Yeah.
Right. Now let's go to the back row. On the far left, we have a U.S. champion, Frank Marshall. Frank Marshall is there on the far left, and he's 46 years old, Frank is. Now, next to Frank Marshall, I believe that is the one and only Savieli Tartakova. Savieli Tartakova, who was born in Poland and actually was living in Poland still in 1924. And Tartakova is 37 years old in that photo. Okay, who's standing next to Tartakova? Oh, that's Geza Marozzi. Not Marozzi, but Marozzi.
Okay.
Hungarian names are always stressed on the first syllable. Marozzi. Yeah.
Okay.
So Geza Marozzi from Hungary. He's actually an one of the old players, 54 years old. Marozzi is. Now, who's standing next to Marozzi? Oh, well, that's Alexander Alyekhin, third from the right there. And Alyekhin is actually, at the time, was living in Russia, still living in Russia, and he became the world champion. Actually, after this tournament, 3 years after this tournament, Alyekhin became the world champion by defeating who did he
Capablanca.
Capablanca, right? So Alyekhin in that photo is he's 31. He was the youngest player in the tournament, Alyekhin. Now standing next to Alyekhin, that is Richard Reti of Czechoslovakia. Very strong player, Reti. There's an opening named after him, the Reti opening.
Yeah.
And Reti actually is 34 years old in this photo. And at the far end, or the top, the far right, there is Yefim Bogolyubov, who actually was in Russia. It was living then. It was the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had become the Soviet Union.
Yep.
And Bogolyubov there is 35 years old. Now, we're going to just briefly show. I think Darren has some individual photos of three of the players. We might as well indicate actually who won the tournament. Before we indicate who won the tournament, let's point out actually who came in third out of 11 players.
Yep.
By the way, this was a double round robin. That means that each of the players played the 10 other players twice, with white and black. So there were 20 games, right?
Yep.
All right. So there is a photo of Alexander Alyekhin, who came in third place. Do you know how many points he got out of 20 games that he played? He ended up actually with 12 points.
Okay.
A point for a win, a half point for a draw, but he ended up in third place with 12 points. Now, let's go to the player who finished in second place, with 14.5 points, and that is the world champion, Jose Raul Capablanca.
Right.
And his score was 14.5 points. So he finished actually 2.5 points ahead of Aljechin. Okay. But now let's come to the winner of the tournament, and this was probably a surprise to a number of players, because they expected the world champion had to be the heavy favorite to win the tournament.
Sure. Yeah.
But the winner of the tournament was the oldest player in the tournament, and that is Emanuel Lasker of Germany. He was still living in Germany. He later came to the United States and settled in the United States, became a U.S. citizen. But here, 55-year-old Emanuel Lasker finished first in this tournament with 16 points out of 20. That is, he finished a point and a half ahead of Capablanca.
Yeah,
so
impressive.
that was quite the finish.
Yeah.
Now you asked me, how much did these players win? In fact, you know the answer. What did Lasker win for first prize in this tournament?
Well, it's $1,500.
$1,500. Now you actually did some research, and you told me how much is $1,500 worth today?
Yeah.
Back in 1924, winning $1,500 is worth now how much?
So $27,000.
$27,000 nowadays. But back then he won $1,500. But they also paid his travel expenses, and so that was pretty good to get at least expenses paid for. How much did Capablanca win coming in second?
You'll have to tell me.
$1,000. He won $1,000.
Okay.
But they gave Capablanca now also expenses, travel expenses, but they gave him a little extra because he was the world champion.
Okay.
Yeah, so that made a big deal being world champion.
Like an appearance fee.
Probably an appearance fee. You know, by being world champion, they say, okay, we'll give you Jose a little extra because you're the world champion. So that's. Again, all the players in the tournament, and the top three, we saw Lasker, Capablanca, Aljechin, who all of them were world champions at one time or another. Yeah. Now, we are going to present to our Chess Chat fans a game that we selected for them that was played by Lasker versus Aljechin. I think it was round 3 of the tournament. Again, they're playing each other twice.
Right.
But this was played in round 3, and we're going to show to our viewers now. And I believe Lasker had white in the game.
Aljechin.
I'm sorry, Aljechin.
Aljechin had white.
I correct myself. Aljechin had white, Lasker black.
Yep.
All right. So how did Aljechin open his game against Emanuel Lasker in this game?
So he opened with D4.
Okay, a very good opening move. We have presented that numerous times on Chess Chat over the years. Okay, now what Lasker responded with was playing the pawn on D7 to D5. So we actually have what we call right now a double. It's a queen pawn opening, but it really does. We're going to get into more definition as we proceed with this game. So how did actually Aljechin continue on his second move?
The most popular second move in this position, C4.
Now, do we have a name now for this opening by playing C4?
So it's already the queen's gambit.
Right. Oh, because white is offering a pawn, the C pawn.
Right.
All right, it's called a gambit.
For free.
For free.
In quotes.
All right. So black has to make a decision. Does black capture the pawn, accept the gambit, or decline the pawn? All right, so there's two choices.
Yep.
What Lasker chose to do was to decline the pawn. But how are there different ways to turn down the pawn here, decline the pawn?
Yeah, there's basically two, right?
Okay, here's one possibility. How about advancing the pawn to C6?
Yep.
That's a good way.
Yep.
By the way, this also has a name. This is known as the Slav defense because this is very popular in Russia.
Okay.
Yes, this way. How about, for example, playing? Well, how about actually bringing the knight? How about actually declining by doing this? Is this good or bad? I think
it'd be bad because
this is bad.
Yeah,
so let's show our viewers why this is bad. Declining this way. Knight, yes, sorry.
Take like that, and then white just gets the full center and kicks the knight.
And white is given black. Black has given white the center.
Yeah.
So this is not a good move to decline it this way with the knight.
Right.
So we'll put it back. All right, so let's put this back here.
Yep.
So the way that Lasker declined the gambit was just advance the pawn to e6. Simple enough. Now, in the opening, the move, there's both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of this move, it declines the gambit. It opens up the diagonal for the dark square bishop.
Right.
What is the downside of playing e6? Is there a downside to playing e6?
The downside is it makes it difficult to develop that bishop.
Yeah, this bishop is now shut in by this pawn being on 6.
Yep.
So that's the downside. But again, it's a good move. There's nothing wrong with e6.
Yeah,
okay,
it's very standard.
Very standard move in the Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit decline. Okay, now how did Alekhine continue? Move 3. What did he do?
Move 3. Plays knight out to f3.
Okay.
Simple development.
Develops a piece. Well, Black wants to keep pace with development, so Black now develops his knight on g8 to f6. So that's Lasker's move.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lasker, what does he do now? 4th move.
Develops his other knight to c3.
Okay, knight to c3. All right. All right. So Lasker continues with his development, but he now plays his knight on b8 to d7. So he brings his knight there.
Yep.
Okay. All right. But it's a developing move. Yeah. It's bringing that knight into play. Now, it is now Alekhine's 5th move. What does Alekhine decide to do here?
Well, he takes the pawn on d5, and we both thought that this is kind of making life easy for Black, right? Because it allows him to recapture with the pawn, and that pawn was shutting in the bishop. So
yeah,
it feels like it's making Black's life easier.
Right. It does make Black's life easier because Lasker did recapture with the e-pawn. He certainly not. He didn't do it with the knight. He could have actually taken with the knight, but it's simpler simply to take with the e-pawn.
Yep.
So he takes back. E takes d5. And so we have an exchange variation. Will those pawns be exchanged? C taking d5 and E recapturing E takes d5. We have an exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit. All right. So it is now White's move. It's White's 6th move. Before you play Alekhine's move, what is the most commonly played move in this position? This has been played probably millions of times around the world.
Yeah, I think it's bishop to g5 is the most common.
The most common, it is. Bishop g5, pinning that knight on f6 is definitely the most commonly played move. Yeah. But Alekhine didn't do that.
No.
What did he do instead?
So he developed it to f4.
Okay, so looking at the screen here, seeing bishop f4. All right. So now Black actually in this position could actually develop his bishop here on f8, could bring it to b4 maybe with the pin, or possibly bring it to e7. These are all playable moves, but Lasker decides he wants to strengthen the defense of that pawn on d5 by playing c6. It also opens up actually a diagonal for the queen to come out also.
Right. Yep.
So it has two points in his favor. All right. So it's Alekhine's move. What does he move on move 7?
Plays e3, allowing him to develop the other bishop, the light squared bishop.
Okay. And again, White is three pieces developed.
Yep.
Black has 2 pieces developed. And this is where, again, Black could have developed his 3rd piece by moving the bishop out, either e7 or b4, the pin. But he moves the same piece again. The knight he had moved on move 3, he now moves to h5, knight h5. He's probably intent on getting rid of that dark squared bishop by moving that knight actually to h5. Okay. All right, so, and there's no way that actually Black can save that bishop. I mean, there's no way that he can go.
One possibility is
yes, he could, right?
There.
Exactly. But of course, that bishop to g5 could be met actually with bishop e7.
Right, and then they probably get exchanged.
It'd probably exchange.
Right.
But that didn't happen. He could have done that.
Yep.
That Alekhine could have played the bishop g5, forcing a block, with the bishop e7. Instead, what did Alekhine do on move on his 8th move?
Yeah, he played an interesting move. So he plays bishop to d3.
Right.
So he's going to allow the knight to capture the bishop. So
And doubling those pawns.
he's going to double those pawns.
Double the pawns.
Isolate the d pawn, and now black will have the bishop pair and white won't.
All right.
But he obviously felt like his development, his lead in development was
right.
worth it.
Because he does have the lead in development. Look, right now he has 4 minor pieces developed.
Right.
And all that Laska has developed are 2 minor pieces.
Yep.
Yeah. So he feels he can allow this. He can allow this capture on f4 with the knight. So after bishop d3, Laska carries out his plan. He was intent on getting rid of that bishop, and he takes. Knight takes on f4. The bishop is gone. Okay. So, of course, Alyekin's response is natural.
Yep.
He recaptures.
Pawn takes the knight.
He takes f4. Okay. All right. So it is now Laska's move. Okay.
So we can say that this pawn, this isolated pawn, is going to become a key feature of the rest of the game.
That's true. This is weak, having an isolated pawn.
Right. So we call it an isolated pawn because it has no pawns on the files next to it to defend it. So.
Right. Right now it's defended by the knight on f3.
Right.
But as far as getting help from another pawn, there is no help.
Right.
There's no assistance as far as defending that pawn with another pawn.
Right.
All right. This is what actually Laska did on move 9. He comes bishop d6. Does he have a threat by playing bishop d6?
Sure. So he's threatening the pawn on f4.
Okay.
That doubled pawn.
And I'm sure Alyekin does not want to lose the pawn on f4. Does not want to give away a pawn.
Yeah.
So it's clear that Alyekin has to defend that pawn. There are different ways to defend that pawn.
Sure. Yep.
I mean, he could defend it with the queen, for one. Queen up defends it.
Defend it, yeah.
Yep. Or, of course, a stupid move, I think, would bringing back a knight to e2, which would defend it. But instead, but Alyekin's attitude is, okay, I'm going to have to defend it the other way, which is simply playing the pawn up to g3. All right. So now the pawn on f4 is defended with the pawn on g3.
But all the light squares around the king are
It'd be different if this bishop were available to be placed itself on g2, but now it's committed itself to the d3 square. All right. So Laska says, okay, time to castle. So Laska now castles on move 10. All right. That's his move. What does Alyekin do?
He does the same. He also castles.
Oh, he castles. Okay. All right. So it is now Laska's 11th move, and he places this rook on f8 and seizes the open file here. Rook e8 is his move. All right. A good move.
A good move, and a side benefit is it frees up that square to pull the knight back if necessary.
If necessary. Okay. It is now Alyekin's move. What does he do?
So queen to c2.
With a threat?
With a threat, the pawn on h7.
Okay. Double attack on the pawn on h7 with the queen and the bishop. So that looks like that could be handled in different ways. One way, I would think, this is one way, is just to advance this pawn to h6. That looks like that stops the win of a pawn by white. Another way is actually this knight here could go to f6 and defend that pawn. But Laska chooses, yes, that knight, but not to f6, but he brings it back to f8. Because actually this clears actually the style open for the queen. So the knight goes back to f8, protects the pawn on h7. It is now Alyekin's 13th move. What does he do now?
So Alyekin decides he wants to redeploy this knight.
Right.
So he brings it back to d1 temporarily.
Because he saw no future keeping it over here.
Right.
Because it's actually...
It can't go here, can't go...
Because black controls those key squares. So he decides, as you say, he wants to redeploy that knight. Now this next move I find puzzling. I don't think we came up with an explanation why.
I think he just wanted to keep this knight out.
Yes. There's a possibility the knight could sink into there, and because of so that makes sense because the knight actually has that ability to sink in there.
Yeah.
Lasker says, I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to allow the knight to sink into with e5. So he plays f6.
Right.
Which certainly keeps the knight out.
Keeps the knight out, but like we were saying, it was also possible that, if the knight did come in, he could play it
Then he could
afterward.
do that. Yeah.
I don't know if that's any
right. And force the knight to go back.
Go back.
Right.
So anyway.
But he played f6. Lasker played f6. Yep. All right, so now it's Alyekhin's 14th move. What does he do?
So he redeploys the knight to e3, just like we said.
All right.
To d1, off to e3.
All right, so as far as the development, how many pieces have been developed by white here? We have now 4 pieces I see developed, and actually, as far as development for black, he only has actually 3. The rook, the bishop here, the knight at f3. The queen, again, still has another. So white still has the lead in development as far as
I can't really even say that knight is developed because it's on the back rank.
It's there. It's defensive knight. It's defending the pawn.
Right.
Yeah. So white still has really technically the lead in development here.
Yeah.
Now here is where Lasker now develops his light squared bishop and plays it to bishop e6. All right. So he plays it there. Okay. Another piece developed. It's now Alyekhin's 15th move. What does he do on move 15?
So he plays knight h4.
All right. All right.
Feels like an odd move.
It does seem like an odd move. All right. Well, is it to support the advance? Maybe the pawn to f5. Is that a possibility? Or maybe not? Maybe. Well, anyways, after knight h4, this is where Lasker decides, this bishop is hitting a wall here. This is a stone wall here. He realizes this bishop has no effect against these pawns on h2, g3, f4. Right. So he brings the bishop back to c7. All right. Because he has a plan.
Looking for a better diagonal.
For a better diagonal.
Yep.
This is not the diagonal to be on when you're facing a wall. All right. Yep. So it is now Alyekhin's 16th move. And what does he do?
He starts expanding on the queen side, b4.
Right, exactly. All right, so b4. All right, so Lasker carries out his plan of redeploying this bishop. He brought it back to c7.
Yep.
So now he brings it to b6. Bishop b6, he has a threat. What is the threat?
It's threatening the pawn on d4, which is isolated, unprotected.
That's right. So that pawn is now under attack, and that pawn has to be defended. White has to defend that pawn, cannot lose that pawn, and there are different ways to defend the pawn, but this is move 17 coming up for white.
b6. Okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Move 17. Yeah. So how does white defend that pawn on d4? He doesn't do it with the queen, like moving it to b2 or c3 or crazy stuff like that. Yeah. What he does.
So he pulls this knight back to f3.
Right.
So it's almost like he's admitting, that was a mistake.
That knight that moved on move 15 now comes back to where it was before.
Admitting that was a waste of time.
That was a waste of time moving in there because he has to come to the defense of the pawn on d4.
Yep.
All right. So at this point, Lasker brings this bishop on e6 to f7. Okay, so that he just retreats it back. Retreats the bishop back to f7. It is now Alyekhin's 18th move. What does he do? 18th move.
Yeah, so here we were saying that Alyekhin is, an aggressive player.
Yes.
And this is probably a position that calls for something a little more defensive.
Yep.
But that's not his style. So maybe something, what were we saying? Something... Yeah, because one thing, this bishop is probably looking to come here.
Oh, yes.
So he could have done something like this.
Yes, that's
so that if the bishop came here, he could either push the pawn or put the knight in the way. So it's probably a position that calls for more of a defensive move.
More defensive, yeah.
But that's not Alyekhin. He's an aggressive player, so he plays an aggressive move. He plays b5.
Plays b5, which allows Lasker to actually carry out this plan of bringing the bishop to h5, attack the knight, which is necessary to protect this pawn at d4. If this bishop would eliminate this... By the way, the bishop is now attacking an undefended knight, for one thing.
Yes.
So Alyekhin has to respond to this attack on the knight, but there's an easy way to do it.
An easy way to do it. So he plays G4, but
every time he's moving these pawns in front of his king,
sure,
he's
weakening it.
He's weakening this castle position by being forced to move that pawn to stop the attack on the knight. All right, so now, of course, Lasker, in response to the G4, retreats the bishop back to where he came from, bishop F7. So he's back. But again, he's forced Alyekhin to advance weaken that position.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
All right. It is now Alyekhin's move, is it not?
Yep.
And on move 20, what does he do?
So pawn takes pawn on C6.
Okay. Now, Lasker does not take back. Instead, he plays a better move, much better move.
Yep.
He plays rook over to C8, which now pins that, and he's threatening to recover that that pawn.
So recover it and attack
the queen. Yeah,
at the same time. Yep.
There would be attack. Okay. Now, Alyekhin I think, probably feels very uncomfortable to be on the C file with this rook on that file. So what does Alyekhin do actually on move 21?
He just gets it off the file, queen to B2.
Right, gets it off the file. All right, and now here is where Lasker, now we're going to show our viewers why something that maybe a beginner might do, but the experienced player would not do this. Let's show why taking this pawn on C6 with the rook is a mistake, a major mistake. There are some players who would do this. They would take rook takes C6, but that would be a blunder. Why? Why is taking there a blunder?
And the bishop would just skewer the two rooks.
And actually win what we call the exchange, winning the rook for the bishop. So that would be a major mistake, taking that pawn on C6 with the rook. The correct way to take back, which Lasker did, was the B pawn takes the pawn on C6. And in the process, he has now a protection for the pawn. He has the defense of that pawn on D5 with the C pawn. That's what, of course, the queen is also defending here. But of course, that pawn on D5 is it's only attacked by the knight, but now it's defended twice with the pawn on C6 and the queen. All right. So now, it is now White's move, is it not? Alyekhin's move. Move 22. What does he do in this position? Move 22.
Plays F5.
Okay, F5 he does.
Which feels a little suspicious because now, there's just a diagonal here is just wide open.
Yeah. All right. So here is what Lasker does. He plays the queen on D8 to D6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right.
So now that diagonal is wide open, he's putting his queen on the diagonal. Right. Threatening to bring the bishop back behind it.
Yes. So what did Alyekhin do after queen D6? He's actually redeploying here?
Yep. Knight to G2.
Knight to G2. Okay. And here is where Lasker says, okay, I'm going to this bishop actually is hitting a pawn which is defended. So there's no future here staying here as long as that pawn is defended. So he brings the bishop back to C7. Now he's putting pressure on the pawn on H2, which, fortunately, is being protected by the knight on F3.
Right.
And that's going to keep that knight on F3.
Right, that knight can't move.
That knight can't move because of the pressure of the queen and the bishop along this diagonal have.
If the knight moves, it's checkmate.
Right, exactly. So the knight has to stay there. So after bishop E7 is now Alyekhin's move now coming up?
Yeah.
What does he do?
Plays rook on F to E1.
Right, okay. So on rook to F E1, Lasker realizes, okay, he's got to... He would love to eliminate this knight, but how does he do it? Well, he decides, I'm going to play the pawn to H5. Attack this pawn here. Okay. Now, let's show our Chess Chat fans why it would be a big mistake for White to take that pawn on H5 with the G pawn. We're going to show it.
Oh, okay.
Take the pawn.
He takes it,
That's a mistake because that allows Black to carry out the plan of bishop takes H5, and now the threat is to eliminate that knight on F3, which was defending the pawn on H2, and this is bad for White to allow this. So white cannot allow this.
Right.
That only happens if on this attack, where are we now? Here. Yeah.
Yep.
So on h5, that pawn, the G pawn can never take the pawn on h5 because of that attack. So what Alekhine does instead is defend the pawn.
Defends it. Yeah.
h3. Okay.
H3.
So he's defending there. Okay. All right. But Laska's intent on trying to eliminate that knight on f3.
Yeah, so this is nice. Yeah.
This is nice how he does it. He plays the knight on f8 to h7.
Yeah.
Okay. The plan is to sink this knight into g5 and deflect that knight
Right.
from the defense of that h2 square.
Yep.
Okay, so the knight is on h7. What does Alekhine do now on move 26?
So exchanges rooks.
Okay, rook
Takes
takes
e8.
east. Okay,
Yep.
all right. And here is where Laska just responds with the rook,
Yeah.
plays the rook. Rook takes e8. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what he does. Okay, and I think at this point Alekhine's probably said, if I can just swap down pieces,
Sure,
he
yeah.
thinks he can hold this position. He can defend properly. So that's why it is now is actually White's move, is it not?
Yep.
So he said, okay. He said, let's exchange rooks.
Yep.
But Laska wisely realizes he doesn't want to exchange rooks.
Right.
Not in this position. He wants to actually the gain. Well, he wants to
Keep the rooks on the board.
keep the rooks on the board.
Yeah.
But he does. He plays the rook over to b8 and attacks the queen,
Right.
forcing the queen now to move. So the queen now has to move. Where does it go?
Oh, yeah, I can put it on c1.
Okay, the queen moves to c1. Okay, but Laska it carries out his plan.
Yep.
He brings the knight to g5. g5 attacks the undefended knight on f3.
Yep.
And so now Alekhine has to make a decision here. Is he going to take the knight on g5, or did he do something else?
Yeah, taking the knight would be horrible.
No.
Because then the queen would come down check.
Oh, absolutely.
The king would have to go there. The queen could come down
Here,
here check.
and that knight would be lost.
Yeah.
With the yeah. So this would be bad news. That knight on f3 can never take the knight on g5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he does have sort of a clever defense here,
Right.
which is the knight to e5, so blocking the diagonal.
Right. He blocks it there. Okay. So.
And it looks like he's just giving up a knight, but we'll see that's not the case.
Okay. And this is what Laska did.
Right.
After Alekhine played knight e5,
Yeah.
Laska figured out, I can take that knight
Yep.
with the pawn. F takes the knight, F takes e5. That's what he
Yep.
did. Okay. And what did Alekhine do in response to that?
Right. So that pawn was guarding the knight on g5. It's
Yep.
no longer guarding it, so now Alekhine can take that knight.
So queen takes g5.
Yep.
Okay. But it's Laska's move, and what he does,
Yeah.
he advances the e pawn to e4 and attacks the bishop.
Attacks
One
the
thing.
Bishop and
opens
the diagonal.
It opens up now the diagonal to come in with the queen down to h2 with the check.
Yeah.
Okay.
So things are already looking
Things
bad.
are not looking good for white here.
Yeah.
All right. So now there are some players, if you showed them this position, they would retreat that bishop that's under attack, for one thing.
Yeah.
That would be immediate. But Alekhine realized he's in trouble here.
Yeah.
He must realize that this is bad news here, and he's got to find a resource to try to find it. Maybe he can find a tactical shot
Sure.
to bail him out.
Yep.
And what he does here is what? It's actually his 31st move.
He plays f6.
And what is he threatening by playing f6?
So he's threatening mate in 1 by queen
Yes.
takes g7.
That's right. He's threatening mate. Queen takes g7 is mate. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how does Laska respond to that? Well, he just advances the pawn to g6.
Yep.
Okay, blocks that. And the threat is still there. Black still has that threat of coming down. But now it's Alekhine's move. What does he do? He looks like he's in dire trouble here. What does he do? Well, he does not want to allow this queen to come down right away. He wants to block this diagonal, right?
Yeah.
All right. So it's actually his 32nd move, and he plays what move here? On move 32. So he brings the pawn up to f4, right?
Blocking.
Blocks it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So now
So this is kind of interesting here, right? Black could just
take could actually black could simply take there, but again the pawn is still blocky here. But this allows actually this pawn on G5 to capture with more pressure on the pawn on G6. Yeah. So Alaska wisely decided, no, I'm not going to take the bishop on D3.
Don't give your opponent any chances.
Don't do that. Okay. So instead he says, I'm going to take this G pawn with the H pawn. H takes G4 for one thing. So that's what he did. H takes G4 was Alaska's 30-second move. Now you can realize, okay, I got to save that. Now I got to save the bishop.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I can't leave that bishop and lose the bishop.
Yeah.
So where does he play the bishop?
So he retreats it to E2.
Okay.
Bishop E2.
Again, the diagonal is still blocked with that pawn on F4.
Yep.
So the bishop's on E2, and this is where Alaska says, wait a minute. I can just simply take the pawn on H3 with the G pawn.
Yep.
G takes H3. The knight is under attack, for one thing.
Yep.
All right, it is now Alekhin's move. What does he do? Does he come out? Actually, now he's looking for a tactical shot to save himself here.
Right.
So it's his move 34. What does he do here?
It's bishop H5.
Now, is there a threat now? He's attacking that pawn now twice on G6, and it's only defended once.
Yep.
So it looks like he's threatening to capture the pawn on G6.
Yep.
So what does Alaska do after bishop H5? Well, what he does, he
ignores it. He ignores the threat. Yeah.
He ignores the threat, and just brings the rook down to B2.
Yeah.
Because that bishop cannot take the pawn on G6.
Right.
Let's show our viewers why that's the case.
Yep.
If the bishop were to take this, it looks like a good move. Unfortunately, on bishop takes G6, we have rook takes G2 check.
Check.
And then followed by rook takes winning the queen.
Yeah.
And white would lose this. Yeah. So that's why in this position, when the rook went down to B2, so he has to save the knight. Of course, the threat is to take on G2 with check. So Alyekhin now on move 35 does what?
Knight to H4.
All right. So, and now he's really piling up on the pawn.
Yeah. 3
pieces piling up on that pawn on G6. However, after the knight actually moves to H4, now Alaska realizes he can safely take this pawn on F4 with the queen. Queen takes, he's protected by the bishop, and now he's attacking the queen. Okay, and
he's threatening to come in it'll be a checkmate in a couple moves here.
Yeah. So now Alyekhin is forced to exchange queens, right?
Got to. Yep.
Queen takes, and Alaska just follows through with bishop takes F4. And after Alaska played bishop F4, Alyekhin resigned.
Yeah.
Why did he resign? Now he realizes he's got to save this bishop. But why did Alyekhin resign and not move the bishop, let's say, back to either E2 or D1? Let's say he moved the bishop back to E2, blocking this here. Why did Alyekhin realize he has to resign the game? Because, as you pointed out,
I guess for.
Well, how about this? Is this a good move? Bishop here, forking.
Oh, right. Yes.
And it would win the piece and the game.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
And so in this position, this final position, Alyekhin realized he's going to lose material and lose the game also.
Yeah.
So this is how this game came to an end. 36 moves, and Lasker again the winner of the tournament. Again, they really expected Capablanca to pull this out, but again, Capablanca finished a point and a half behind. Now, I want to say something about, with the time remaining, we have time remaining, about the Alamac Hotel. Now, something, okay. The Alamac Hotel, as I said, we saw a photo early in the program about this hotel, which was built in 1923. 5 years after this tournament was held, this great hotel, this great tournament in New York, Babe Ruth moved into this hotel.
Really?
That's where when he played for the Yankees, because he started playing for the Yankees in 1920, but actually
where did he come from? What team was he on before that?
I don't know.
On the Red Sox.
The Red Sox. He played with the Red Sox, what, 5 years, 1914 to 1919?
Yeah.
What, as a pitcher? Yeah. And then the Red Sox sold him to the Yankees. Big mistake, right?
Yeah.
Was it a big mistake? Anyways, so Babe Ruth moved in with his second wife. His first wife had died. I don't believe there was a divorce, but there was his first wife died. He married an actress and a model by the name of Claire Hodgson. Okay, now, what is interesting about Babe Ruth moving into this hotel, the Alamac, where the chess players were 5 years earlier, is this hotel became famous. The Alamac Hotel became famous in the country, made the news in 1929.
Okay.
It was the first hotel in the country to hire female bellhops.
Oh.
No, up to that time, no hotel in the country ever had female bellhops, but the Alamac had female bellhops. Now I'm sure that Babe Ruth, who was known as a known womanizer, he was actually had problems with infidelity. I'm sure his wife, his second wife, kept a very close eye on the Babe when this hotel started hiring female bellhops.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's an interesting little footnote to the Alamac Hotel. Yeah. I also want to point out that 3 months after this tournament was held in New York, it was held mid-March to mid-April 1924.
Okay.
3 months after this tournament was held in New York, in Paris, you know what's happening in Paris, France?
That's right.
In July 1924, the Summer Olympics. The Olympics were held in Paris.
In Paris.
And guess who were invited to play in the 1924 Summer Olympics?
Chess players.
Chess players.
Yeah.
Chess players were invited to be a part of the 1924 Summer Olympics.
Yeah.
And you had 54 players from 18 different countries who assembled actually in Paris to play. They broke the 54 players into 9 groups of 6 players each.
Okay.
And the winner of each of those round-robin groups would play in a championship finals. Yeah. And the others would play in a consolation championship. Yeah. But that was in 1924. Now, the fact that chess players were playing in an Olympics, Summer Olympics, they were never invited back. The next Olympics, the people were saying, well, wait, why aren't the chess players back here in 1928? The chess players, why were the chess players not invited back? It seemed like a good idea getting the chess players in the Olympics in 1924.
Yep.
The reason why the chess players were not invited back, because the Olympic Committee thought they were being duped. They were duped by the chess players. The Olympic Committee thought that these chess players who were coming to play from these various countries, 18 countries, well, these are amateurs. The Olympics were for amateurs.
Right.
The athletes who are playing in these events, they're all amateurs.
Right.
The chess players, not all the chess players were amateurs. They were professional chess players who were playing. And because of that, because these chess players, some of them were professional, that really ticked off the Olympic Committee, said, we can't trust these chess players. We're not ever going to invite them back. Now, what has been happening for the past dozen of years or so, at least, is the World Chess Federation, by the way, the World Chess Federation, because of the Summer Olympics in Paris in July 1924, they were established. The World Chess Federation was founded on July 20th, 1924, during the Summer Olympics in Paris. And we're celebrating this year the 100th anniversary of the founding of the World Chess Federation, which is more commonly known by its French acronym, FIDE, F-I-D-E. You know, that stands for the Fédération Internationale des Échecs in French. Yep. So that's a big event now. I mean, FIDE is having a big celebration on the 100th anniversary of its establishment. So it's rather nice that we actually have the anniversary, that the Olympics are starting, aren't they starting at the end of July? They're starting at the end of this month, I
Very
believe.
soon, yeah.
Very soon.
In Paris.
But it's very fitting that the Summer Olympics of 1924, and we have now the Olympics now in Paris again, 100 years later.
Yep.
Now, what the Wachusett Chess Club is doing, which no other club is doing, on the day, July 20th, which is the day FIDE, the World Chess Federation, founded, our own Mike Camiso, our chief tournament director of the Washington Chess Club, is running a World Chess Day U.S. Chess Federation rated blitz tournament, which is open to anybody who is either a current member of the U.S. Chess Federation or could join. They could join it. He's holding this tournament at the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University, using rooms 144 and 145. It's a Saturday, July 20th. Now, if anybody's interested actually in playing or even coming by and watching, we welcome spectators to come by and watch the tournament. Yep. It's going to be a 6-round double Swiss, which means that you play each of your 6 opponents you have twice. Right. So you'll play a total of 12 games. Yeah. But all these games are rated. All rated by the governing body for chess in the country, which is the U.S. Chess Federation in St. Louis, where you have been. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I've mentioned this before, there is a photo of you with the founder of the St. Louis Chess Club, which is the premier chess club in the country, Rex Singfield. There's a very distinguished photo of you and Rex Singfield on the website of the Wachusett Chess Club. Now, I think I asked you, who took that photo of you and Rex Singfield?
My daughter did.
Your daughter did. Okay. So you had the opportunity to visit the St. Louis Chess Club. And again, they hold the major events like the U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's Championship, the Singfield Cup, the Cairns Cup, which is named after his wife, Jeannie Cairns. So you had that opportunity.
We could, since you're talking about Jeannie Cairns, could mention that she just established about a month ago a $100,000 prize.
Oh, yes.
So for any U.S. woman who becomes a grandmaster, I think before 2030.
Okay.
And she's offering it for up to 5 women. And I saw a video of the presentation. So the interesting thing is we do have one female grandmaster already, right?
Yes, we do.
Irina Krush.
Irina Krush is our only women grandmaster. She's our female. She's our only female who's a grandmaster.
Right. Yeah. So she was in the audience, and this prize was Jeannie Cairns, Sinkfield, presented her with a $100,000 check, basically because she had already achieved it. And Irina, when she got up, was kind of teary-eyed and said, when you were making this announcement, I was thinking, how can I go back to not being a grandmaster and reestablish, to win this prize? So,
really?
So it was nice to.
It was nice.
She just said, you've already achieved it. You get, the first $100,000.
Okay.
And we can also say that our own Carissa Yip is 1/3 of the way there. She has one GM norm.
Our Carissa Yip, who won the Wachusett Chess Club Championship with a perfect score at the age of 10 in 2014, who got her first norm as a grandmaster and needs 2 more. And if she is able to do that, the World Chess Federation will award her the title of grandmaster.
And she'll get the $100,000.
And, by the way, Carissa Yip won. She is the reigning U.S. Women's Champion. She won last 2023. She won 2 years previously. She's a 2-time U.S. Women's Championship. And she actually learned a lot at the Washington Chess Club. As her father told me years ago, she said, I'm glad I brought my daughter to the Washington Chess Club because she learned. She learned and got better and better by playing at the Washington Chess Club. So,
but I'm glad. A lot.
And again, we hope we are very hopeful that Carissa can become our next grandmaster among the young ladies in chess. Because we have one member of our club, Arthur Barles, who's a big supporter. He's a great believer that there should be more females, more
Right.
women, young ladies playing chess.
Yep.
The number of females who play chess in this country is a small percentage compared to men.
Yeah.
Chess is dominated by men.
Yeah.
But there are women who are very talented, who are very strong, and we have them at the club. We're very fortunate. I think our club, among the clubs, the very few clubs that are still around, we actually have at least 5 active female players who play every week at the club. Yeah, and again, our club is doing very well. Right now, we have the best attendance. Right now, we have the best weeknight attendance of any chess club in New England. Mm-hmm. You will not find a single club in any of the New England states that draws the attendance that we get on a Wednesday night. And I think the Fitchburg State University should be very proud that they are hosting the club that actually has a very rich history. Remember, the Wachusett Chess Club was the only chess club in 1964 when Bobby Fischer did a tour of the country, doing a tour giving simultaneous exhibitions. Yeah. The only chess club he picked out in Massachusetts was the Wachusett Chess Club in Fitchburg. He bypassed the Boylston Chess Club in Boston, the club in Worcester, the club in Springfield. He chose Fitchburg. Yeah. And I've often asked, why would Fisher bypass these other clubs, which are stronger? I mean, they had stronger players. They did, yes. These clubs had stronger players, but he came to Fitchburg because Fitchburg actually, back then in the 60s, was actually, I consider, the chess capital of the state, because the most popular weekend tournament was held here right in Fitchburg. It was the Central New England Open. It was held here. I directed, actually, I remember my very first one in 1965 at the Hotel Raymond, the old Hotel Raymond on Day Street in Fitchburg. Yeah. So players we actually had grandmasters. We had international grandmasters come and play here in Fitchburg. And then we also moved the tournament out of Fitchburg in the 70s because we found a very convenient site at the Holiday Inn, the old Holiday Inn in Leominster, the routes, the intersection of routes 2 and 12. So we actually, chess was very much, this was a hotbed of chess in the 1960s, 70s, right up into the 80s. And now we're back doing very well again, after, and then we've been we had different locations. But our playing site, Fitchburg State University has been our best host. They have bent over backwards for us. We appreciate all they have done. We love promoting them because they've done a lot for us.
And they provided at no cost too, right?
Yes, exactly. And we're very thankful, very thankful. But we want to point out actually that the Wachusett has made its mark in chess. Yeah. Again, back. In fact, I forgot to mention the book on this tournament. One thing we didn't talk about.
Right.
There was a book that was written, edited by Herman Helms, who was the chess columnist for the New York Times. Yep. Also, he was for the Brooklyn Eagle. But anybody who wanted to Google the 1924 International Chess Tournament in New York, they can actually find out if they can get a copy of this book. It has a great history of this tournament. But Herman Helms actually used to. Here's a cover.
There we go.
Yes, Darren has posted a photo of the cover of the book. And Herman Helms, along with his successor Al Horowitz, used to report on tournaments held here in Fitchburg back in the 1960s. Yeah. So again, we thank actually Herman Helms and Al Horowitz, who actually reported results of tournaments at the Wachusett Chess Club in the column in the New York Times.
Yeah.
So we hope our Chess Chat fans enjoyed the game that Dave and I presented to you. We hope to present you next time with another interesting program. See you next time on Chess Chat.